weight, more dense, high value properties, and I think that's a good middle ground. It's based on square footage, and I would say,
Of just the land or of the structures included?
It's because of looking for weight to undeveloped property, if not more weight. So that's a good middle ground. Yeah.
Well, I think the reason we might not be getting extensively before, but I agree with George. I think the degree of impact that these rules will have correlates best with the owns more than anything else. So that makes sense. You also mentioned whether there should be a minimum threshold of participation on returning an application, and I would suggest no, especially looking at a district like the Third Ward, where I think absentee landowners are a major issue they have. People that live out of town, don't maintain their properties, aren't engaged in the community, has been a major blight on that area. And so if they're not willing to participate in this process, I don't think they should expect to have whatever interest they might have reflected in the outcome. Those that are invested and involved, I think, should have the greatest voice in the outcome.
I'll disagree with that entirely and say it needs to be both a certain number of property owners by number and an area. And it's not fair to say, well, because the city has this great idea, we should be able to force it on people because they don't respond.
It should have a minimum number of affirmations. I mean, one owner who owns substantial amount should not be able to decide for everyone. And I think there ought to be some test for a minimum level of participation.
And I think that test would be the fact that this has to go before Planning Commission and they're going to consider it. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think if we make up a minimum threshold, it's going to be kind of arbitrary. And I think in a situation where one particularly large landowner is driving the conversation over the over the disagreement of others, that's where the Planning Commission would say this is not how this process was intended to unfold.
Well, that's where it's incumbent upon those who have a vision for this to then go sell it to the property owners and not just have this very low threshold that gets the process rolling, the train's out of the station and people are trying to catch on. It needs to be, if you want to do this, then you go out and sell it to people.
Just curious, Ron, what you might think would be a minimum threshold number that would be achievable. Just curious.
I think it's 50% of the number of owners and 50% of the area, both.
Had to reply or be in support?
Be in support.
Oh, greater than 50. I mean, you'd never get there. You'd never have one district.
Well, then you got to be creative in selling it.
But you can't get, it'd be like saying you need 50% of the people to vote in the mayor's election. You can't get 50% of the people to vote.
That would be interesting.
You can't get them. I don't think, as a realist dealing with minimum lot size historic districts, you're never going to get 50% of the people reply. You can get a sampling, but and everyone remember this.
Minimum lot and historic district are trying to preserve something that's there. Here you're trying to make a change to what's there.
Yeah, and while we're talking about these mandatory rules, everyone, let's be clear, we have mandatory rules. We have a set of rules. We're just modifying the set of rules in these special pilot areas that are deemed to be walkable places in the city's best interest. So we're just changing the rules. We're not saying there weren't ever any rules. There are setback rules and there are parking requirements. And
100% agreement on that, but we're going from one set of rules that puts you in a box to another set of rules that puts you in a box.
In a city.
And our next discussion is about market-based parking areas. Mm-hmm. Why can't we just have this all be market-based? And like you said, the people that want to participate and are active and engaged can do it, and the people that want to make another choice can do it.
Because you determine that the city's not getting the desired outcome that it wants, and before it changes the code for the entire city, you're going to pilot some areas that are most likely to be the most walkable, and you have a variance procedure that allows people to opt out where it makes sense. So That's the reasoning behind even gathering together the group and coming up with this. You have to think that
Well,
you want to, the city's code should be reflective of what the city really wants. And in these pilot areas, with the participation of the homeowners and a certain level of, support, that ought to be what we have, and then allow people to apply for a variance.
100%, and you mentioned CIP funds will be used in these draft or these pilot areas, right? So what is the city spending money on to invest in infrastructure in these areas? Because I agree 100%. If citizens want this and their city wants to do this, then the city can also help pay for it, in my opinion. Or at least if you're going to be, what are CIP investments going into this area? How is that going to complement the pilot areas and the new design standards? Can you guys elaborate a little bit more on that?
So if I could clarify, Hogan Street is already being selected for the CIP improvement by Public Works before our proposed pilot area. So it just happens at the same time. It's not because it's pilot area and the city put the CIP funding, so they are independent.
Well, yeah, I realize that, and it's great that they're happening at the same time, and that's what I hope we would do is as we go through the CIP and we're going to be making public investments in infrastructure, that we look at what the potential is in these areas to potentially support the development of more walkable places or other types of public infrastructure that we're looking to do, whatever facilities, bike facilities, all that. I mean, are we aligning that?
Not at this point, as we discussed before. The main intent of this ordinance is to create the development guidance for the private developer on the private properties. That is the purview of this committee regarding the CIP project or other public-private funding. Is not the purview of this committee.
Quick question. I confess I've not read the CIP for Hogan. How will Hogan look different once it's been done or redone by Public Works? And does it meet some of the general guidelines or principles we've been discussing around this table for the past several months? Like, I have no idea how Hogan's going to look different after Carol and her team are done.
Based on our communication with Public Works, they are still finalizing the CIP project, the plan. They have different proposals, including maybe either add a bike lane or have kind of maybe widen the paving. They don't have a final proposal yet, but they look into that. It's on one of the 5-year CIP project list. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, while the CIP and this process are not necessarily interconnected, I think if you look at the city's recently revised thoroughfare planning and design guidelines or process, it is consistent. I mean, it looks at all of the same considerations that we've been looking at here in terms of what would support the context of a neighborhood. And in terms of whether this is, driving change or, versus what exists today, I think we forget that what exists today is not the way it has been in the past. Both Hogan Street and Emancipation, formerly Dowling, were streetcar lines and, bustling neighborhood commercial districts. And a change in the rules in the past is part of what led to the degradation of those streetscapes of those business districts. If you go out to Hogan, it very clearly, was a walkable urban commercial district, and some change in the rules in the past is what got us to the situation today, where it's no longer functioning as that heart of the community.
Yeah, just tapping off of that point very quickly. As far as the different design elements, I understand that there's a walkable places element menu that things can be picked from, but I would like to see more clear language about these areas being designed for people of all ages and all physical abilities. Because I think that walkable places essentially kind of always tax towards younger, very mobile folks, and we're going to be doing something innovative as part of a pilot. Let's really start thinking about the design elements that bring in different people.
I want to circle back to the eligibility and how we go about the application. I think there's certain guidance and also experience that we gain in the minimum lot size area particularly, because this is very similar to that in nature, where do people want to restrict them, have other additional restrictions on what they can do on their development. If there's a 10% application, which is just of the number of people, that's good or bad or indifferent, that's what we have to just get the application in. But in order to get it approved, there has to be a large percentage of the square footage of the property owners that are in that area in order to pass it, subject to the approval of the Planning Commission and the City Council. So I would suggest that instead we have so many things with so many different rules, that we try to at least find those things that are similar and try to follow suit as best we can, and if need be, make improvements based on the experience if there's been some things that need improvement in those other ordinances. And what I'm speaking to is Chapter 42, 197 and following.
Yeah, thank you for the comment, but please take your time, review the ordinance language. If you have additional comments, feedback, please email those to me by the end of Friday, September 28th. Planning Department plan to present this draft ordinance language to the Planning Commission in October, so we will appreciate your feedback before September 28th. In the following session, we would like to provide you an update about the Transit Corridor map amendments. Next slide, please. As you remember, the committee early this year, we had intensive discussion on how the current Transit Corridor ordinance has not effectively promoted pedestrian-friendly development along transit corridors. We proposed some potential amendment to the Transit Corridor rules and some amendment to the Transit Corridor maps. At this point, we are still working on the rules. We expect to present those rules to you on the October 31st committee meeting. Today, we would like to provide you some update about the proposed amendments to Transit Corridor maps. In our previous meeting, we proposed 3 amendments to the Transit Corridor map. These amendments include creating required compliance boundary for each station if meeting certain criteria, revisit the designated Type A street boundary by considering, next slide please, by considering both the walking distance from each transit station and adjacent local context. And the third proposed amendment is to consider designating additional streets which are close to the transit corridor and have the appropriate context. Since our last committee meeting in April, we chose 2 stations as case study to test the proposed amendments. They are Fenton South Station on the red line and the Coffee Plant Second Ward Station on the green line. We believe these 2 stations will illustrate and explain the sensitivity to different local contexts, one urban, one suburban. When analyzed the 2 stations, the research we did include existing conditions, land use, permitting and planning activities, CIP projects, and different type of restrictions. On this map, the red star represents the Fenton South Station. The purple line is the transit corridor. The light blue line are the current designated Type A streets, and the red lines are the major thoroughfares in the adjacent area. The Fenton South Station is an example of a suburban station characterized by a spacious, meandering street grid. In this area, the design of low-density development in the surrounding area allow ample space to park vehicles surrounding the auto-centric use, such as office warehouse, distribution services, storage facilities, and other facilities that rely on transportation for their business. This land use map indicates the primary land use in the area are industrial and undeveloped. Considering the existing low-density developments and the network of major thoroughfares which allow for higher speed through traffic connecting points beyond the transit station study area, we propose no change, no amendment to this map. The other station we analyze is the Coffee Plant Second Ward Station on Green Line. This station is located in an urban area with much smaller grid system. The average block in these areas are only 250 feet long. On the map, the red star is the station. The purple line is Harrisburg Transit Corridor. The light blue lines are the current designated Type A streets. The red line is York Street, the major thoroughfare. And the other darker blue lines are the major collectors. The black line south of Transit Corridor is the existing Union Pacific Railroad. So due to its close proximity and connection to downtown, this area is transitioning with not only with adaptive reuse of existing industrial commercial buildings as well as renovation of single-family residential in larger lots, but also with high-density single-family townhomes and other mixed-use commercial developments. According to our land use analysis, much of the land use in this area is traditional single-family lots with pockets and corridors of industrial use. The proposed transit corridor map amendment in this area will create great opportunities for redevelopment of these old industrial sites close to the transit corridor. The recent planting activities in this vicinity shows a significant number of high-density single-family townhomes with some commercial mixed use in the area. And some of these applications are accompanied with variances of reduced building lines and reduced parking spaces, citing the development is occurring because the developer wants to take advantage of the close proximity to the transit station, and the walkable infrastructure is another reason why developers are attracted to this neighborhood. On this map, the green dashed lines are the completed CIP sidewalk projects in the area. These new sidewalks improve pedestrian access to Harrisburg and the light rail. In addition, we did some restriction analysis in the area. We have not found any single-family residential restrictions for properties close to the station, but we do find there are 4 sites have been designated as historic landmarks in the close proximity. And we also see a few blocks which are shown in yellow. They have been approved with minimum lot size. So with all the research and analysis we just went through, we propose to create a required compliance boundary along the transit corridor, Harrisburg Street, and the 3 streets intersecting, the north-south street intersecting with the transit corridor. They are Sampson, York, and Hutchinson. So they are shown in yellow line on the proposed boundary map. The farthest point of this required compliance boundary is about 800 feet from the transit station. We believe the proposed required compliance boundary will help to encourage urban form development, which is consistent with the development trend in the area. In addition to the proposed required compliance boundary in yellow, we propose the optional compliance boundary in pink. On the proposed boundary map along the transit corridor, outside the mandatory compliance boundary, the rest of the transit corridors are in the optional compliance boundary. In addition, if you compare with the map on the right with the map on the left, we propose additional amendments for the optional compliance boundary. One is to include Texas Street and Preston Street, which are the 2 east-west street parallel with Harrisburg. One is Texas Street is north of Harrisburg, Preston is south of Harrisburg. So these 2 streets are very close to the transit corridor, and with the current local context, lots of the commercial use development within it, it has the right context to promote walkability. So that's why we add these 2 into the optional boundary. Originally, they are not. And the second proposed amendment is to remove portion of Sampson, York, and Millby Street, south of the Union Pacific Railroad. Those are the three. If you look at the map on the left, there are three light blue lines, north-south, south of the Union Pacific Railroad. Currently, there's still the Taipei Street, but with the physical barrier created by the railroad, we think it's practical to have the Taipei Street stop at the north boundary of the railroad. So that's why we propose that amendments. So these two case studies just illustrate the general approach we propose for the transit corridor map amendments. With this approach, we will revisit each of the transit corridor map for each station based on the existing conditions and the adjacent local context. We believe this is a context-sensitive approach. It will help to overcome some of the challenge created by the current transit ordinance, and it will help to promote pedestrian-friendly development along the transit corridors. If you agree with this context-sensitive approach, we plan to present this approach to the Planning Commission in October. If the Planning Commission also supports this approach, then the planning staff will start to apply this approach to do the analysis for the other transit stations.
I just got a quick question for clarity. So this is, because we have transit corridors that are designated that don't have mass transit or fixed transit like rail. So we're not going to be doing those, right? It's just the transit stations we currently have built. Because I think Richmond's a transit corridor, obviously,
Yeah, we need to look into that. Right?
So is it going to be just transit stations, or are we going to look at all transit corridors?
We have some discussion. We don't have a conclusion yet, but we will provide you an update later on. We look into that issue.
Controversial enough just to start with the stations and see if we could get to any resolution there. So, I mean, just synopsis, optional performance standards along the transit corridors, looking at ways in some areas where it makes sense to make a proposal to make some areas a little larger than they are now and make that performance standard mandatory with the variance procedure. So they're just going to do the analysis and come back to some form of recommendations where would it might make sense so that we could weigh in a little bit more. If we think there's just no will whatsoever to make any of the performance standards not optional, then this is the time to speak about it. If you don't want them to go through all this effort and then someone say, no, there's no area where we want to consider mandatory performance standards by a transit station, right? Did I clarify that quite well? So if no one thinks this is a good idea, it's the time to speak. If you think it's all right to continue down the path of evaluating where we might, not saying it's going to be done, but let them do the research of where it might be most appropriate. The reality is you're probably going to pick 20 out of 100 and see how it works for a little while. Pilot the area.
I'll go on record. I'm all for expanding it to areas we think is appropriate. I don't necessarily want to support mandatory. I still think it should be optional. But I think, and this was.
And we could do both research at the same time. Look at where it makes sense.
Part of the
to expand.
discussion when this ordinance was originally drafted was talking about the expansion of it, because there are some areas that have the context, like we've seen, where you can expand that around that one initial corridor because of the commercial uses around it.
Try it and see how it works.
I mean, I understand how the word mandatory, is a concerning word, but we need to remember that there are mandatory development requirements around these stations right now that mandate auto-oriented, non-pedestrian friendly patterns, and that
Actually, they all have the option to go urban right now because of the ordinance. So they're not under mandatory. It's a market-based approach at this point because it's optional. You do have an urban-based form and you have the suburban-based form.
it's still further process that isn't the default, and I think it makes all the sense in the world to make the default set of regulations adjacent to a transit station support the, easy, convenient, comfortable access to that station.
It of the benefits of that performance standard opting in at the same time. So we're certainly doing a lot of work in making sure that we're promoting it as an option and promoting the benefits of it while we do the research. Are we okay with continuing on with the research?
And as the representative for the Harrisburg corridor that is trying to fix some of the adaptive reuse problems with our partners in the community, we're grateful to have the opportunity to talk about it, because there's a tremendous opportunity, like George, some of the vision that you've talked on panels before, that we're not quite meeting. We need some help, so thank you.
Okay. I think the consensus was keep going down the path we're going.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in the following session, we would like to provide you some update about the proposed market-based parking area. On this map, the pink area is the current parking exempt area created by the parking ordinance. It includes the entire central business district, a portion of Midtown, a portion of East Downtown, and a portion of Third Ward. In the past decade, the city has experienced significant new development, redevelopment in Midtown and East Downtown areas. As this committee discussed before, the minimum parking requirements have created significant challenge for development in these two areas. Considering these two areas' close proximity to downtown, the availability of public transit, and the existing urban form development characteristics, Planning Department proposed to expand the current parking exempt area from the pink area to include a portion of Midtown Management District, which is shown in green, and portion of East Downtown Management District, which is shown in blue. The proposed new boundary will be delineated by the natural boundaries. So the expanded areas are bounded by either freeways or railroads. We have attained support from both the Midtown Management District and East Downtown Management District. If City Council approves the proposed market-based parking area, all properties within the market-based parking area will be exempt from the minimum parking requirements. Developers could decide the number of parking they need based on their market analysis. On August 30th, the Planning Department presented the proposed market-based parking area to the Planning Commission to start the dialogue. We are currently in the 30-day public comment period. In October, we will present the public comments we have received to the Planning Commission. If the Planning Commission approves the proposed market-based parking area boundary, it will be sent to City Council for action by the end of the year. We think the proposed market-based parking area is closely related to this committee's discussion about walkability. Therefore, we would like to provide you this update for our ongoing efforts. Do you have any questions?
So to summarize, we're in this 30-day period. You have till September 30th. The community can weigh in. You can call Mr. Hector Rodriguez over here at 832-393-6600, and he would love to hear from all of the city of Houston. To date, he's had about 6 calls and about 3 emails. So we've got 9 people, which is a 0.00001 response, just so we know. But overall, the comments have been, some have been questions, but it's overwhelming. It's been supportive so far. There hasn't been a high level of opposition. But we encourage all of you to weigh in, tell your neighbors to weigh in, and you can weigh in at this point. Yes, sir. Great.
A question. You seem to be mentioning over and over that you got support from the management district. These areas do have residential homes and such in them, and I would suggest you get in touch with the super neighborhoods in the area and gain support there and sell there, in addition to the various neighborhood associations, because the parking, any type of parking changes will affect them dramatically. And you might find a lot more input on that side, I suspect, if you discuss that.
Yes.
I'd just clarify that the Midtown Management District does include residential property. Residential properties pay into it, and the board, I believe, is majority residents. So we do have that perspective on the Midtown board. But I agree that our super neighborhood was recently reactivated. I think it would be good to present it to them. Both with this and the walkable area, we don't really see it as trying to drive change in Midtown, but really just legalize what, the type of development, that many of our more conscientious developers are jumping through hoops to do already, that fits with a vibrant urban neighborhood that we are and aspire to improve upon.
George, you're in favor of this? Josh, you have a comment? Okay.
I actually have a question for staff, just for the record. When you all looked at the boundaries and deciding how to expand, getting rid of the parking minimums in these two neighborhoods, is there any interesting data that you can share about, like, I don't know if you were able to do this or not as you do deliberations, but like utilization, parking, I mean, were people just not using the parking, or are they using the parking? I mean, did you all notice more street parking, less street parking? I just wondered if you all had any idea of activity that kind of drove your consideration of, okay, these are the boundaries, get rid of the minimums. I think it's fascinating. I think it's an interesting conversation we're having. It's going to be a big deal when we do it, if you guys do it.
I've got a question. Residential parking areas, residential parking permits, right? You can apply for that. But a lot of the streets in those areas are parking metered. So how would that work? That's an obvious conflict. Would those residents be able to apply for residential parking permits, or they wouldn't be able to because, yeah.
I think they can still apply for residential parking areas. The proposed boundary changes will not affect the residential parking areas. So applicants can still, neighborhood can still apply for the protection.
So we have RPP in Midtown already in metered parking areas, and typically the RPP requests have been for after 6 p.m. when the meters are not in effect. So it has not been problematic. Now during the daytime when you need the turnover, and depending on how much commercial is adjacent to those meters, then we're going to have to look at that if and when that should become a challenge. But
Yeah, I was just curious because if you're getting you're allowing, obviously, there will be more pressure on parking on the street now, obviously, or I'll build a parking garage either way. But yeah, I was just curious how the conflict was that going to work. If there's already existing parking meters, that's good because most of them are free after 6.
I would say, based on our mixed-use projects, the biggest benefit would probably be to retail. We've developed, I think I've used case studies before, different restaurants, the Reeve, Gloria's, where when we were in the code, we only built 1.5 per 1,000, and those restaurants did very well. High Fashion Home's an example, 43 spots for 125,000 square feet, where retail would be the biggest beneficiary. Apartments, to get financing, they typically have to get pretty close to code. Everybody has most people have a car except for James. James would be, a little more on the cutting edge, and we might get there soon as Ubers and whatnot, and Uber pool gets cheaper. Office, surprisingly, I'm partnering with a very big apartment developer that does urban and suburban, and surprisingly, in the suburbs, they find their actual parking when they studied it across their portfolio, and it's multi-million square feet. It was below the city kind of parking ratio, even in the burbs. So urban, I would with the transportation options and the off-street parking, I would expect it would be even greater. But in that order, as far as helping the retail, though, the diamond lanes in Midtown do take away, I think, a big opportunity to create a pedestrian buffer, and I don't know where we stand on that, but certainly it's hard to do retail and activate that when you've got an ability to kind of park on both sides of the street. So I bring that up as one. If we had that extra parking as well, you can imagine we could do away with even less parking in the project.
Yeah, and as we see more developers doing co-working spaces, or like they're giving people, whether it's Fortune 500 companies or smaller businesses, they're asking their employees to work in a much smaller area within that building or within that floor. So it just reminds me of what people have said in the past here or in prior meetings, that at least for the short term, they're trying to build for tenants who are saying, I actually, because my workers come in from all across the region, I actually need more parking. I mean, who knows? One day that will change, right? But as of now, they're trying to figure out, okay, you're asking more employees to work in smaller areas, so you're cramming in more people in per floor, so which means if they're not walking or bicycling, they're going to drive And as office starts emerging in Midtown, more of it in Midtown and East Downtown, you know, for the foreseeable future, that's something that the office development community, I could imagine, they're thinking about, because they got to get a loan to build the stuff.
We didn't prohibit them.
That's true. They could, no, they could build a parking garage. That's,
Encourage them to build a garage.
I agree. And they will probably still continue to do that until it starts flipping over and people start changing their behavior.
Regarding your questions about utilization and whatnot, I mean, you know, obviously they haven't done a detailed utilization study on these huge areas because you don't have to. I would invite you to come up to the roof of my building, you know, when during the hours that Midtown has a parking problem, say, you know, 9 p.m. on a Friday, and you can look down and see that most of the parking in Midtown is, you know, still not utilized. And the reason is that right now with the requirements, parking is not an asset, it's a liability. So, you know, while we have people paying, you know, rather high prices for the Houston area for residential space, commercial space, everything else in Midtown, they're paying nothing for parking because the requirements are so high that the free market price of it is free. And so I think having a functioning market for parking will help bring all of that back in line and, you know, bring us to a utilization rate that is economically, you know, reasonable.
Okay. So that concludes my presentation today. The next session will be the public comment session.
Are there members out in our audience that would love to talk to us? Because we'd love to hear from you. Come on up. State your name and.
Matthew Camp, and I had a question about the size limit or restriction for the walkable districts. And I kind of think about two places. One, it's more like in the Heights that may have a kind of commercial strip or small block and hub that could be the kind of catalyst for that neighborhood, or something that's more in line with my neighborhood where you got one potential block owner that's like 1,300 feet long. And, you know, how do you create you know, judge the size of what can be the district?
The only thing we've really determined at this point is that it must be the entire block. We're not going to stop in the middle of a block. There currently isn't a minimum, but there's conversations of it being more than one block for an application process. It doesn't make sense to do one little block at a time all over the city. So there could be a minimum 3 block or certain square footage or something. It has not been determined. We're anxious. You could email us with your thoughts there or whatever. But a lot of these single blocks are owned by one individual. They could certainly ask for a variance now, or they could kind of, it wasn't really designed for one person to create their own little walkable district. It was to create a streetscape,
Sure.
you know, over an extended period of blocks.
Right, but that, if you create the one little district, then you have the chance to expand that, and that's
Yes.
kind of like the
That's right.
catalyst, and then as that district grows. Yeah.
There's been good discussions, and I think we'll continue to discuss it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jake Patrick. I'm an urban planner here in the city of Houston. I work for Mary Lou Henry. And we were talking the other day, and we were saying that I think we can all agree that one of the most important things for a walkable place is having a sidewalk to walk on. And a place that does this is Dallas. They require people to maintain their sidewalks and keep them in good condition. And I think that's something that maybe we could get in this ordinance as well. And I think the way that Dallas does it, if people don't comply, is the city will come and do it for them, and then place a lien on their property. So, yeah, just want to offer that.
Perfect.
Is it commercial
Well,
and
Dallas
residential?
does it citywide, actually.
Okay.
We'll look into it. Any other comments? Yes, please. Thank you for coming up.
Hello, I'm Anton Sienkiewicz. I'm the Executive Director of the East Downtown Management District, or EDO, which is shown prominently on the map for the market-based parking area. I just want to reiterate, we've already spoken with planning staff, but we are very supportive from the side of the management district for this initiative. As well, residents in the district, I would say easily 90% of the people I've spoken to all chose Edo as a place to move to because of the promise of it growing into a walkable urban district of Houston. And they fully understand that this market-based parking area designation will allow all those little warehouses that are peppered throughout the district and around the corner from their house to redevelop and become that neighborhood restaurant that they've always wanted, or coffee shop, et cetera, without having to tear down the rest of the block to build a parking lot. I just want to make sure that's understood by everyone on this committee, and also I'll be contacting planning staff to see if we can designate Edo as a walkable place initiative area as well, because I think this market-based parking initiative just goes hand in hand with the walkable places. One other comment regarding the transit corridor map amendment. I did not catch if the parking requirements are a part of that? They are, okay. Because I would certainly suggest probably 1,000 or 1,500 feet from any high-frequency transit station that the that those properties also be exempt from the parking ordinance.
Noted.
Thank you very much for all the work you're doing. It's all very exciting.
Anyone else want to speak to us? You know, so people kind of ask me, we're 18 months into it here, what have we been doing? You know, so we've created a process to create walkable places where they're appropriate. So while we've designated these 3 and we're going to have these pilot areas and they'll probably get adopted over here, we're showing the rest of the city, here's a mechanism that you could go and do the same thing where it's appropriate for you, with the rules tailored to those particular areas. So I think we're showing a great, it's hard to explain it exactly what we're doing because there is so much flexibility in the options of what we have over here. But getting started with these pilot areas, getting a process for other people to do it is a major milestone, you know, for a city that's a big ship that doesn't move that quickly. I hear this all the time. You know, so we're getting that. The expansion of the central business district to the market-based area is a pretty big win. Hadn't been done in 30 years over here. The looking at the transit corridor performance, even the evaluation is a valuable tool so that we could try and make some recommendations there. The extension of some of these areas all around the transit stations could be a pretty big win. So, I mean, I think our work hasn't been for naught. I appreciate your patience and getting us to this point or whatever, but I think we can move a little more rapidly, close up at the end of the year and have some of these things adopted by the very beginning of 2019, and we'd see changes pretty rapidly thereafter. So I want to thank you all once again for your work. Thank you for being here today. Mushan, thank you for all you've been doing this for 18 months. And I really hope that you will email some comments on the draft ordinance. It's an opportunity for input. Same thing, your other comments in the neighborhoods, have them call Hector and talk about their concerns about expansion of the parking area. Other comments of the committee? If not, Kim can make it to walk the dog before 5:30.
Before 6.
Thank you all.
Something really important is that you do need to start on this first rung, both hands, and support all of your body weight with your feet up off the ground before you start. So you cannot have your hand on here and jump off your feet to move up. You can't use them to help you at all. You need to show complete control, feet off the ground before you start moving. Now you can use any different grip that you might like. If you like to use underhand or over, as long as you don't touch this outside at all. You need to keep your hands on these inside rungs all the way across. Same thing at the end here. In order to complete this obstacle, you need to have both hands on that last rung with your feet off the ground to show the ref that you are controlled and finished. And at that time, your time will stop and you will have completed the battle rig.
Stage 3 of the finals. Soldiers in combat encounter obstacles during patrol, challenging them physically.
Come on, Benny. Bring it home.
With this competition for the garrison, the idea was, there's a lot of different activities, as in working out and also doing something different. The passport that we were given, all of it was actually pretty unique. Everything was different. It was all not one thing. We went all around. We went horseback riding, wine tasting, so that's a very unique experience. Not only did we get to do it, we did it in Italy, one of the most beautiful countries, in the world.
The passbooks were focused toward us going to different MWR facilities. And it just helped me as the boss president to understand those facilities, what they provide, so it's better for me to plan events around MWR facilities for the soldiers.
For me, I had no idea that the skeet shooting existed, so we actually went out to go skeet shooting, and that was actually really fun too. We had a blast.
The way that our garrison did it is we all signed up, and then they kind of, interestingly enough, to kind of create the whole building a team from beginning to end. You don't know who you're going to be with whenever you get put into a new unit or a new squad. So they built the teams and were like, here's the names of people you're going to be with. Meet up and move forward. Have fun.
It incorporated all of the boss pillars, pretty much. Quality of life. You had community service involved in it. We had to do life skills. So it was a way to get the soldiers, for one, out of the units to actually get out of the barracks rooms. Two, for them to lose weight or gain muscle mass, whatever their goal was that they wanted to do, and just to have fun doing it.
What was the dancing thing we did? That was kind of
cool.
I liked it. I know you guys did it.
What was it? Well beats.
Well beats. It's like Zumba or whatever.
Because it was a lot of us trying to dance, and not really succeeding. It was terrible. Deep sea fishing was really cool. Along with the competition, like being in Korea, we got to experience the culture a lot with like the deep sea fishing, for instance. Because like we caught the fish and then the fishermen filleted it right there. So we had like sushi right there on the boat.
I get you for 2 weeks. What other man, coach, trainer gets out of the United States Army for 2 weeks? I do, so it's a blessing and honor, so I'm going to take it as such. I'm going to take it as such. Pick your best. Pick your best. Pick your best. Here we go, it's time. Pick your best. Go!
PSC Clark. She brings a lot of, morale to the team. If any of us are like, feeling a little lack of motivation, she can help boost us up. And, she's funny too. And just as a person, PSC Clark is a funny person.
Specialist pouch. He is always very encouraging and always making everyone laugh and pushing us to do better. He's always leading from the front.
Specialist Malik is probably our best runner, and he's pretty funny, and he's pretty good at rock climbing, so that should be a plus.
Sergeant Jones over here, he's a pretty relaxed character. He's always napping. Brings everything down to a nice level. No highs and lows. Keeps us mid-level.
So Brian, he's like the cornerstone for the team. Each individual has their own role in the team. He kind of cements the team together.
PSC Galisano, he's one of those young soldiers in the unit. He hasn't been in the unit very long, maybe like, 6-7 months or so. So I try to grab him first, and his motivation to want to do great things is just out of this world. So I just feel like his will to want to win is what's going to cause us to win this tournament. Because it's too what?
Too easy.
All right, then.
3, 2, 1, go!
Look good. Keep breathing. There you go. Keep calm. Nice. Fight for it. All the way to the end. You got it. Come on. You got it. All the way. All the way to the end. Both hands. Nice. Good job.
Good.
Take a beat, yeah.
Nice job.
Nice. Come on. Get that ring. Nice. Up. All right.
So take a second.
Ring.
Take a second, and then you'll start on the ring.
Yeah, take a beat.
Strike one.
These things are pumpy.
Come on.
You can do it.
Good swing. go. Go. Good swing. Good swing. Good swing. There we go. Come on. There we go. Swing. There we go. Nice. Swing. Swing. Get it.
Got that.
Nice.
All right. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. Come on. Come on. Grab the other ring. Recover. Recover. Stay calm. Stay calm. Stay calm. There you go.
There we go. Reset. Reset. Come on. Gotta go.
There you go.
There we go.
Grab that one with your right hand. There you go. Now do the pull up and get on there. You got this. You got this. There it is. There it is.
Got this.
Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. This is a good one. This is a good one. Go on this one. Go on this one. You can do it. Pull up.
Go get it. Gotta get one.
You gotta go. You gotta go. Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
It's a tough one.
2 minutes, 10 seconds.
I thought I had it. I definitely didn't. Yeah, too easy. I'll get up there, run through it, no problem. I got to those black bars and they'd take everything out of you. Yeah, I should have waited.
Our group is unique in the fact that we have 3 females. Just looking at us like that puts us at a disadvantage.
We live on a joint base. All the branches live on the base, and the Marines were able to get put into a mixed team.
Dog Team 4 is going to take this home, guys.
We're not only going to take it home, we are going to destroy the entire competition.
Destroying or not? Together.
Together, absolutely. Working
team,
together,
one fight.
one team, one fight, showing them what the variety of the military has to offer. Exactly. Oh, get on.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go.
Nice, nice. Good technique, good technique. Go ahead and drop it between there. Go ahead, grab that last one. Finish this obstacle. Go ahead and drop. Go ahead and drop.
Now drop.
Drop. Shake it out. Shake it out. There you go. Nice and smooth. Keep breathing. Keep breathing. Don't hold your breath.
There we go.
All the way past that white, you got it.
All the way to the end. All the way to the end.
Both perfect.
Nice job. Nice job. You're good.
You got it.
Okay, this is the toughest section right here. Take 30 seconds if you need to. Recover. Recover.
You got this. Yep.
It's on you. It's on you. This is on you.
Get there.
Got it. Yeah. Nice. Looking good. Looking good. Keep moving. Keep moving. Good. Good. Good.
There we go.
Throw that thing back. Throw that thing back. There you go.
Come on.
Fast on that ring. Fast on that ring. You got it. You got it. You got it.
Get it.
That right hand, you got it. Yep.
There we go.
There you go.
Nice job.
Nice.
Go
Yeah,
get it.
Yeah. Get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Good.
Grab
Gotta
that
move.
right hand,
Gotta
you
move.
got it.
There.
Yep.
Nice. Nice. Right hand. Right hand there. Right hand there. Okay. Do it. Pull up through the top of your swing. Get up there.
Pull up. You gotta get it.
Yeah.
Get up there. Get up.
Do you have what it takes to be boss strong? Team registration for the 2018 competition is now open until June 29th. Visit armymwr.com/bossstrong for more information.
Forearms all the way. Use your feet on the percent. Oh, that's all right. That's okay. You're still in the game. Still in the game. Okay. Shake it out. Get some shot. Nice job. Nice job.
That was the toughest part now. You shake it out, you're past
Now
it.
let's go. Now finish it. Now finish it. Come on.
Nice. Nice. Looking good. Looking good. Nice.
Come on.
There you go. There you go.
Work, go. There we go.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Nice. Come on.
Yeah. Almost there. Play it smart. Play it smart.
Swing.
Focus. Focus.
There we go. Come on.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Second strike. Nice run. Nice run. Furthest competitor so far. Nice job.
We knew he could do it, so that's why we chose him. I mean, he killed it. Nobody on this team could have done it better than him.
about the competition. We sat down with him and he was all on board. With him, it's all about winning. Like, we're winning competitions all over.
I think Mayfield is like the pulling force to kind of like pulls us together. Cause like we're all different. Like same thing in the Army. Like everybody's different. But Mayfield has been like the center of all of it. She's always like, hey, let's go to the gym at this time. Hey, let's do this, let's do that. She's always had like the schedule set up for us. We didn't come here to lose. Like we didn't go 14-hour flights.
Yeah, I'd say
go
definitely.
home, sore bum losers. Like our commander in the first line is not gonna let that slide. So.
Well, I mean, coming from the same unit, like I know we were motivated the last 2 months, so another 2 weeks is nothing for us. Like I know we blew everyone out of the water in the last peninsula we were in, so then states shouldn't be any different.
3, 2, 1, go. Yes, go get.
Nice. There you go, there you go. Play smart, play smart.
There we go.
Good call, good call.
Good.
Keep breathing, breathe.
Good work.
All the way to the white, you got it. Yep.
Come on.
All the way, come on, keep moving, move. Go, we're almost there. Finish it, finish it.
Good,
Nice.
you got it.
Good work.
Nice.
Don't hold your breath, breathe, don't breathe.
Shake your hands out, you got it.
There we go.
Throw that thing back. Oh, that's all right, that's all right. It's only one strike, you're still in the game,
You're gonna start at the ring when you're ready.
Yep.
Wait till you're ready
Hey.
and then you'll...
Strategize this right now. Strategize before you get up there. Strategize.
Go get it.
Big bullet. There you go.
There we go.
There you go. Get up high on there. Make it fast. Make it fast. Yeah, there you go. All right. All the way to the end. Play it smart. Use your feet. Use your feet. Use your feet on the rosette. Stand on these things. Stand on these. Stand on those. Stand on them. Stand on these. All right. He's good. He's good. All right. Calm down. Relax. Relax. You don't have any more strikes left, so you gotta play it smart from here on out. All good, all good. This thing's tough, man.
It was a shot to my ego that I didn't get to finish it, but I think it was a good lesson for me that I need to fail at things before I can succeed sometimes.
When it came to forming our team, we wanted to pull different MOSs together and also just different people in different backgrounds together. So we decided to choose a female, we decided to choose an Asian, a Mexican, African American, a Caucasian, and just bring everybody in units together as one. That's how the Army is comprised, and that's what the Army is made of. So we felt like we had a better chance, and we had a lot of different people to come together within the group.
3, 2, 1, go!
Yep, good.
Go. All right, nice. Keep going, keep going. Keep moving, keep moving.
Both hands on that white
Breathe,
line.
that's good. Keep moving, though. You got to keep moving. All the way to the end.
You grazed it.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, way to finish, way to finish. Good. You're still in the game. 0. Relax with it.
Yeah. All you.
All the way to the end, all the way to the end. There you go. Make a fast reach for that ring. You got this. You got this. Nice. Good. Right hand.
Keep it up.
You gotta go.
I like it.
There we go.
Reach that right one first.
Grab it. There we go.
Swing it. Get it up.
Left hand up on there high. Left hand up on there high. Your first strike.
First strike.
Take a second.
You got this.
There you go.
There we go. Come on.
Work your way to the end.
Walk
Work your way
it,
to the
yep.
end.
Keep going.
Get the feet on there. Get the feet. Pull yourself in with your feet.
Good.
Right here. Feet there. Stand on that. Stand on that.
There we go.
Good. Pull yourself in. Nice job. All right. Now relax.
Nice.
The hard part. You can do this. You got 2 more minutes to get through this thing.
Good.
There we go.
You got it. Keep fighting. You got it.
Go.
Right hand on that ring. There you go.
There we
Yep.
go.
Watch that bolt. Watch
Split
that
that
bolt.
finger. split your fingers.
There we go.
Readjust your hands.
There we go.
Readjust your hands. Do not grab the ball. There you go.
There you go. Swing. Swing.
Come on. Get that ring. Get that ring. Get that ring.
Go, Marcel. Go. One more. Get the ring.
I think all of us are alpha males. You know, we are going to beat everyone. Our team is the best, and that's our mentality going into this competition. We are not going to finish second, third, fourth, fifth. We're going to finish first and represent our name and our team and our unit. Everyone is something else. It's a new breed.
We have a lot of guys come to our unit who are legs, and they tell us all the time what we do is a whole new level. We're super cool all the time.
We pretty much play with explosives and jump out of planes for a living.
3, 2, 1, go.
Good. Yep.
Come on.
Oh, sorry.
No, next.
Take a beat. Take a beat. Play it smart. Okay, relax. Go through this thing. There you go. Nice, nice, nice. All the way to the end.
Both hands to the white. Nice.
Nicely
Good.
done. Nicely done. Good.
One strike.
Yeah, one. Yeah, he has one strike. So I mean, but if he gets a strike, then he's out.
Come on. Come on. There we go.
Nice.
There we
Good,
go.
Good, good. Almost there, almost there. One more move.